Delighted to be able to interact with all of you on this webinar session. I'm coming to you from just outside San Francisco. Um, I'm really excited about brand relevance. I've been studying it for a long time, and it, uh, it really seems to me as I look at all these case studies on brand relevance that it's quite amazing how many times you can explain what's going on in the marketplace with brand relevance. The reality is that brand relevance really drives market dynamics, because market dynamics occur when there is some sort of major innovation, and it changes what brands are relevant in the marketplace. And um, uh, so really, the relevance concept is becoming more and more important. And uh, let me give you a couple of examples. If you look at the beer industry in Japan over some 50 years, it's quite remarkable. There's only been 4 times in which the market share trajectory has actually changed. And 3 of those times, there was a major subcategory introduced, and the 4th time, 2 subcategories were simultaneously repositioned. 50 years. I mean, Karen had a 60% share, literally plus or minus a half a percent for 20 or 25 years. And then in 1986, Asahi Dry was introduced. And so a new subcategory, namely dry beer, was introduced into the marketplace, and Kirin lost 10 share points within a year and a half. Kirin's free fall stopped about 6 years later when they themselves introduced a new subcategory called Ichiban. But 5 years later, they started into free fall again when they repositioned lager beer into the draft category, and super dry simultaneously repositioned dry beer as a fresh um, leading draft beer brand. And then again, that free fall of Kirin resumed and didn't stop until they again established leadership in another subcategory called Hapashu, a low malt, low tax beer. So 50 years. It's just simply remarkable. Only 4 times did the market share trajectory change. I mean, the reality is markets have a lot of inertia, and people don't change easily. I can go to any category and tell a similar story. Take the computer industry, for example. In the 60s, it was IBM and what was called the seven dwarfs, RCA, GE, and some others. And if you look at the ensuing history, the names of the leaders changed. It wasn't because they outmarketed IBM. It was because they used innovation to create whole new subcategories. In the 70s, the number 2 brand firm became a new one called Digital, who introduced microcomputers. In the 80s, we had Sun with network workstations, which created a billion-dollar company. It was the fastest growing firm in the history of the US. Silicon Graphics created a $500 million firm with their subcategory graphic workstations. And then in the late 80s and the 90s, we had Dell with their made-to-order PCs. It became a $50 billion firm, not by out-marketing their competitors, but by creating a whole new subcategory, a new type of computer. And again, I can go through virtually any category you can name, and the same story holds. It's only when somebody has innovated, created a new must-have, that growth occurs. It's really quite extraordinary. So the bottom line is marketing doesn't really create growth. It just churns. You know, I had a person that led the the detergent business at Procter & Gamble, who said that if they got a quarterly increase in market share of 0.1%, they were happy. There's just so much inertia. Well, let me stop back and define what I mean by brand relevance. If you look at the customer decision process, customer first selects what product category or subcategory to buy. Might be an SUV. And then they determine the brands to consider: an Audi, a BMW, a Mercedes-Benz, or a Cadillac. And then they have a brand preference. Maybe it's a BMW. So the first two steps are what I define to be brand relevance. So a relevant brand is a brand for which the right product category or subcategory was selected, and the brand has enough energy and credibility to be considered. Then it's a relevant brand. Brand preference means that the brands that are relevant were analyzed and one was selected. So in my view, we as marketers spend way too much time on brand preference and way too little time on brand relevance. And one of the really new observations here is the brand category or subcategory can be in play. You don't necessarily have to consider that as given. Now, the routes to winning are very different in these two competitive situations. Brand preference competition, the strategy is incremental innovation. Every year, a little bit better, a little bit cheaper, a little bit faster. And the marketing strategy is my brand is better than your brand marketing. Try to convince people that we need to select my brand. It wins the brand competition. The problem with brand preference competition is most incremental innovations are quickly copied. And more fundamentally, it's not a route to growth. With rare exceptions, brands simply do not grow engaging in brand preference competition. Yet that's a predominant type of competition that exists. Brand relevance competition is very different. Winning is not because your brand is preferred, it's winning because the competitor's brand is not even considered. The strategy is to engage in what I call substantial or transformational competition that generates a new must-have and defines a completely new category or subcategory. And marketing is very different also. Marketing is about making sure the new category or subcategory wins the relevance competition. It's not about brand. It's not about brand preference. It's about the category or subcategory. So marketing is engaged in defining and making sure the category or subcategory wins. It's kind of Econ 101. You want to create a monopoly and compete in monopoly situations. So it's really important to understand the difference between incremental and substantial competition. Innovation. Transformational innovation is where you really change the whole game. Salesforce.com introduced cloud computing into the software milieu about 10 years ago. That was a game changer. Incremental competition is where there's a noticeable impact on brand preference, but it doesn't create a really must-have. Substantial competition is where you're competing in the same way, but you have some innovation that's so different, that's so new, so much better, that it's a must-have. And it's very important to distinguish between incremental and substantial competition. If you have an incremental innovation and you manage it like it's substantial, you're going to waste a lot of resources. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to create a new subcategory. You're not going to have a must-have. And you're going to lose a lot of momentum in the innovation race. On the other hand, If you have a substantial innovation and you manage it like it's incremental, you might lose a huge opportunity to create a whole new growth platform. So to decide which you have, you've got to ask these 4 questions. Can we deliver in the marketplace, given our culture, our strategies, our priorities? Is there really a must-have? I mean, let's be honest. Look ourselves in the mirror and tamper down our professional excitement about what we have invented. Is there really a must-have? Third, is the business worthwhile? Even if it is a must-have, is there enough people that will regard it as so to make it a worthwhile business? And does it have legs? Can we maintain our ownership of this category or subcategory over a long enough time to make it worthwhile? There's an enormous payoff to winning the relevance competition. Enormous. Chrysler introduced in 1982 the minivan. They sold 200,000 vehicles the first year. They've sold 13 million to date. For 16 years, they had no competition. 16 years, none. I mean, that vehicle saved Chrysler. It paid for a whole lot of other initiatives they did. Enterprise Rent-A-Car, where you rent a car in case your car is in an accident, is in the shop to be repaired, they went 35 years with no competition. And can you imagine what life is like with no competition? And we've got a lot of analytics. For example, 108 business launches, 14% of the sample had 38% of the revenue, 61% of the profits. This 14% are those creating new categories or subcategories. I mean, we know it pays off. New product success, we know, is correlated with differentiation, which is correlated with creating new categories or subcategories. One of the most robust empirical findings in all of marketing. So, what is kind of the key to doing this? Well, it's a whole different sort of role of marketing. And it's a role that marketers aren't really comfortable with. It's about defining the new category and creating barriers. And let me just quickly talk about a couple of ways to do that. One, you can simply execute over the top. Zappos.com is an online food store, and they really own that space because of their execution. They have a 24/7 call line that famously once in the middle of the night found a pizza restaurant for a customer. Another time, the Zappos people went to a competitor and got some shoes and delivered it to a customer. Over-the-top execution, really hard for somebody to come in and compete. Continuously innovate. I mean, look what Apple did with iPod, the Nano, the Shuffle, the Touch, the iPad. The Chrysler, the 16 years without competition was based in part because they innovated. They created a driver's side sliding door, removable seats, swivel seats. So it was a moving target. It wasn't so easy for competitors to react. Third, you can become the exemplar. You can become the brand that represents the new category or subcategory. Puts competitors in an awkward position. For them to become relevant, they really have to reinforce your position as the exemplar. And you look at iShares in the financial community or something, Prius in automobiles. Prius went 10 years, incidentally, with no competitors, really, with over 50% of the worldwide market for hybrids. You look at ESPN in television channels. They own the sports category, or they did for a long time. And Salesforce.com, which, again, introduced cloud computing in the space of a lot of software categories. Now, if you're going to be the exemplar, what you have to do is, again, something that's not comfortable for marketers. You have to not talk about the brand. You have to talk about the subcategory and the category. So when Salesforce.com introduced cloud computing, they spent all their time talking about why cloud computing is superior to the, quote, old-fashioned, unquote, way. They were the thought leader. They did all sorts of outrageous promotions to talk about cloud computing and how the old-fashioned way just wasn't going to work. And as a result, they established cloud computing, and they kind of own that category for a long time, and they're still a major player, and they're one of the fastest growing, most successful companies globally. A fourth thing you can do is you can enrich the category. So instead of having a simple must-have that's based on an attribute or functional benefit, you can make the category much broader. So for example, Pampers isn't just about diapers. It's about baby care. If you go to the Pampers Village website, you'd just be astounded at what a go-to place that is for mothers. They start with pregnancy and go all the way up and talk about the issues involved in all stages of the baby and infant development. And they provide a community so you can talk to your peers about that issue. So for some, this becomes a must-have. They want to have a relationship with a brand that's really involved not in their product, not in selling their product, not in demonstrating their product is better than other brands, but in something more basic, a shared interest in baby care. So this shared interest becomes a must-have. It becomes part of the relationship. So somebody that duplicates some innovation in diapers isn't necessarily going to be relevant. And then there's branded differentiators. The idea is that if you have an innovation and you want to own that innovation, brand it. I mean, branding is really powerful. You can, a brand does a lot of things. It helps you communicate, provides an aid to memory. It sort of summarizes a whole set of values and attributes that might be, in the aggregate, kind of complicated. Branding makes a huge difference. People can copy what they do, but they can't copy the brand. You own the brand. So you take a brand like OnStar, and it provides for General Motors a way to own an innovation. I mean, the power of branding is incredible. There was a study done once by some colleagues of mine where they asked people to evaluate two garments, one of which had Alpine Class Fill in it, a branded differentiator. And what they found was the garment with the branded differentiator could support a higher price. People would justify a higher price for that. So you see things like the Weston Heavenly Bed or the Quattro four-wheel drive. Each of those are branded innovations that help them. Gary Garcia said, you do not merely want to be considered just the best of the best. You want to be considered the only one who do what you do. That's brand relevance competition. Let me just say a word about relevance as a threat instead of an opportunity. If you're an established brand, you have to worry about losing brand relevance when people no longer make what you're buying, or you lose energy and visibility and then consideration. So you've got a couple of choices if you see the new subcategory emerging, say healthy eating in the fast food market. One, you can just stick to your knitting. You can, like In-N-Out Burger, it makes burgers, fries, and shakes, extremely unhealthy fare, but they do it very well. And they've decided to keep doing what they do very well, and they gamble there's enough people that are going to indulge once in a while, or enough people that really aren't interested in healthy eating, that they'll still have a marketplace. You can gain parity. So when McDonald's was losing customers to Starbucks, they in 2007 introduced McCoffee, which was not better than Starbucks, but it was good enough. So it made people avoid saying that McDonald's is not relevant for their mid-morning stack because their coffee wasn't good enough, because it's good enough. So that's another thing. You can reposition. LL Bean was a hunting, fishing, and camping company, and when that became less of a major interest in customers, they changed to an outdoors company. And so this transformation allowed them to stay relevant to their customer base. You can leapfrog. So Cisco is famous for when they have a hole in their product line, they might buy a company, and then they surround that with a Cisco synergy and actually become a better option than was before. You can also lose relevance because you lose energy and visibility, and therefore you're no longer considered. And you can do that by product vitality, like Dove went from a $200 million company to over a $3 billion company by adding products, body wash, facial core, antiperspirants, shampoos, beauty bars, men and care. And this all created a lot of energy, a lot of vitality. But a lot of people can't actually be in a position to do that. So another option is to generate or create what I call a branded energizer. And that's something with energizer that you can attach your brand to. Like Avon developed the Walk for Breast Cancer. Enormous amount of energy and visibility, and that's attached to the Avon name. And it's been going for 20 years. They've raised $640 million for breast cancer. They've educated 100 million women, so it's got a lot of substance to it. It's just not a marketing gimmick or anything. So anyway, that's kind of the story. Brand relevance really drives marketing dynamics. The plain flat reality is most marketing expenditures do nothing. With rare exceptions, they don't change the marketplace. There's too much inertia. The only way to really achieve real growth is to engage in substantial or transformational innovation, creating new must-haves that define new subcategories that will be growth platforms. And then you have to define and create barriers so that competitors cannot become relevant to these platforms. That's the way to compete in the modern world. And so that brings me to the title, Forget Brand Preference, Win the Brand Relevance Battle. I should say that every week I make a commentary on brand relevance and other matters on davidaaker.com. I welcome you to look at that. And let's now turn to some questions. Let's see. Here's one. How can you prevent this spillover of communication innovation to competitors? Well, I think that what you have to do is to make your communication unique and related to your innovation, which you own, and then competitors are not able to copy it. If you take, for example, Salesforce.com, they did these very imaginative promotions where they would go to the convention of their competitor and they'd pick it outside and say, no more old software. You have to switch to the new kind of software. Well, nobody can copy that because they're talking about building a subcategory that they own. And so that really is the point, that most marketing expenditures don't break out of the clutter and they don't break out of the clutter because they're not based on really substantial innovation. Yeah. So how do you know you're winning at brand relevance? Is it market share? Well, yeah, market share implies you have a fixed category. And the whole goal of brand relevance is to create a new category or subcategory in which you have 100% share. So the share is really kind of a funny concept because it all depends on the share of what. And again, what we want to do is to create something so new that we have 100% share or 80% share, 85 or whatever. Um, so the goal is really to define relevance, and to do that, what you have to do is to say, okay, if you're buying this subcategory and you have to define the subcategory, you have to ask people, what brands would you consider? And that's really what you want to own. You want to be uh, that. Comment on blue ocean strategy. That's a great question. There's a whole lot of books on innovation. Clayton Christensen's books, Blue Ocean Strategy, the books by Zoot, and all these say somewhat similar things to the brand relevance. There's the four things unique to brand relevance. First of all, in brand relevance, we talk about branding. And those books don't really even mention branding. So we really want to understand branding and the role branding plays in creating these new categories and subcategories. The second thing is we talk about subcategories in addition to categories. Blue Ocean only talks about these creating whole new categories, but really the action is in subcategories. For every time you create a new category, there's 20 people that have created subcategories. Third, we talk about substantial innovation, not just transformational innovation. And fourth, we talk about the importance of building barriers to competitors. And all these four things are very limited, get limited attention in Blue Ocean and the other books like that. So what is about professional services provider? Um, uh, how can a service provider engage in brand relevance competition? Well, a service provider, first of all, is going to be delivered by an organization. So therefore, an organization and its values and its programs and its culture and its heritage can be used to actually define who is relevant and who is not relevant. So you have people that only want to work with companies that have an environmental progressive posture, for example. And so if you're in a service company, you can define a subcategory in that way. You can define a subcategory based on an organization who values innovation, or who values customer service, like Zappos.com. So the organizational values and programs come into play in a service organization. Service organization also has a whole lot of levers and to draw upon to change the touch points in the customer sort of point of view. And so a service provider finds it often easier to create new subcategories than does somebody that's in the product. If I believe in winning the brand relevance battle, should I spend more on innovation than marketing? I think that what is needed in an organization is a balanced portfolio. I mean, you still need marketing, you still need incremental innovation, but you should carve out a part of your innovation portfolio to engage in substantial or transformational innovation. And so a balanced portfolio will have several projects that are in different phases, introductory, development, go-to-market phase, that involves substantial or transformational innovation. That shouldn't be your only innovation, but that should be directionally for almost all firms more than it is now. Most firms have inadequate levels of substantial and transformational innovation. Can redefining help in creating new categories or must-have? Yes, definitely. So if you have an existing business, then and you see a trend or you have an innovation that has the potential to define a new business, then one option indeed is to redefine your brand and to make it a leader in a new category. Or you can create a sub-brand or an endorsed brand that allows you the elbow room to really become a leader in a new category or subcategory. The brand relevance battle is just the same sector of the market, or food brands can battle against event brands. I think that a category can define very broadly. I talked about Avon having a relationship with their customer based on the walk for breast cancer. Well, that can become a must-have. That can become a way to define the relevant competitors that you want to buy from, and that's of course an event. And so defining a subcategory does not have to be based on attributes and benefits. It can be based on a broad array of different characteristics of a supplier. It says transformational innovation might be carried by competitors too, especially through the years. How can I enhance brand loyalty? I think that if one reaction to the creation by competitors of new subcategories is to fight a subcategory battle, is to say that okay, there's a new subcategory, but instead of joining it, I will fight it. I will make my subcategory win, and I'll do that in part by building up the loyalty of my customers. I mean, look at Gillette. When electric razors came in, and an important new subcategory, some thought would make the straight edge obsolete. What did Gillette do? Well, they kept innovating, and today the electric razor is really a minor part of the market. That subcategory did not win. The existing subcategories then actually won out. So that is one way to address a brand relevance threat. So I think we've had a great 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes. I really appreciate your participating in this. It was some great questions. Again, look at my blog, davidaaker.com, and I want to thank the BrandSquare people for putting this on.